Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AI Advantage Show. This is episode number 3. I want to welcome all marketers, innovators, and AI enthusiasts to another wonderful episode. We're your hosts. I'm Colin Lepiscopo,
Kim Reynolds.
and we're here to equip marketers like you and professionals with the insights and connections needed to gain a competitive edge with artificial intelligence. And on today's episode, we're going to be unpacking the latest AI trends and discussing the current problems and promises of generative AI for brands.
I'm really excited about this. And our guest this week his name is Rob May, and he's the founder and CEO of BrandGuard.ai, which is the world's leading brand governance platform. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. We'll let him explain that to you. But he's a 4-time entrepreneur and angel investor in over 100 AI startups. And for fun, he also writes a popular AI newsletter called Investing in AI. One little caveat, Rob has been having some difficulties getting connected, so hopefully we're gonna be able to just bring him on whenever he manages to get his connection working. Tech difficulties, it's not perfect yet. But in the meantime, you've got Colin and I to chat with. Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into the topic today, we'll definitely address the topic. Hopefully Rob can join us. I think he's on a train. He's looking for a quiet spot on a train, and hopefully he can get his connection going. But we did want to tell you guys about a powerful tool called the AI Prompt Exchange. And so if you've ever felt stuck for inspiration, or you're just kind of needing a little bit more to, maybe like look at some AI prompts, you want to utilize ChatGPT for your business and just looking for that inspiration for your next campaign, well, you can log on to the AI Prompt Exchange, and there are 2,000, there's more than 2,000 now, I think, field tested marketing strategies and prompts that you can use. It's free to join. I think it's the largest open database of crowdsourced ideas. It's proven by industry peers. They're constantly getting rated, and we're all about just driving results with these prompts. So if you're optimizing a new approach, looking for a new campaign idea, just check it out. It's free. Just visit the AIpromptexchange.com. There we go.
Nice.
All right.
I just messaged with Robin. He is working very hard to get in. So
he's working on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's working on it. Cool. Yeah, great.
But in the meantime, since we're going to be talking about this topic anyway, why don't we start with just kind of an overview of what generative AI is, and then we can bring Rob on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I would say, Kim, do you want to take that away, or what would you say? What's your definition? Says, hey, what is generative AI? I've heard people say this. What is it?
Well, I think that you did a great job. Oh, Rob's here in the nick of time.
He is here.
Yeah, maybe we can pass this to him.
It is the first question. That is the question I think everybody wants to know. So without further ado, let's get you in here, Rob.
Nice. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you sound great. You sound great for a train.
I'm off the train now, so I'm
okay. Good, beautiful.
Nice.
Even better.
Well, you missed our introduction to you. It was glowing, and we raved about your awesomeness with AI and startups and all of the wonderful things you've done. So now we're going to get ready to hit you with some questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Yes, today's topic, just show topic, just so you know, you may have seen, is it's really just like, what are the current problems and what are some of the promises and the pros of generative AI for brands? And that's kind of what we want to circle around. So we were starting off with well, wait a second, let's start at the basics. What is generative AI? So we know that we're all talking about the same topic here.
So generative AI is a series of tools, AI models that can generate content, or really they could generate anything. They could generate data. The way to think about it is classical machine learning models, deep learning models were trained when you would say, we have, here's 1,000 cat pictures, here's 1,000 dog pictures, they're all labeled. And then you would show it a picture and say, is this a cat or is this a dog? And those are called discriminative models. They discriminate between types of content. And then people realized you could also slightly tweak these models to generate content as well. So when something's seen 1,000, well, you need more than that, but tens of thousands of cat pictures, tens of thousands of dog pictures, it can go out and generate something that looks like what it's seen before. The way that works is it takes everything that it picks up on, all the similarities that it sees in, say, all the cat pictures, and compresses them down into a mathematical space. And then when it's asked to generate one, it expands that space a little bit, adds some noise to it. When I say noise in the sort of statistical term here, and that's why you get all these like really, really creative things out. And so what people have done with generative models is they've started to use them to create different types of content. They've started to take them and use them for very specific targeted use cases where you put a bunch of rails on the outputs of the model so that you get out the kinds of things that you want to get out.
Interesting. So that is, everybody's talking about generative AI. Not everybody is on the same page as you, and that was a really great explanation. Thank you. But what I was wondering is, what are some of, because businesses are thinking about incorporating this, what are some of the major pros and cons about using generative AI?
Well, the nice thing about it, let's start with the pros.
Yeah.
It's very, very effective for things like personalization at scale, which is every marketer's dream.
Mm-hmm.
So to give you an example, if you go to Midjourney or Stable Diffusion and you type in, the image that you want to see, that might be something that it would take your designer hours or days or even weeks to create. Generative AI might create that in a matter of seconds or minutes. And so if you think about a product that you sell that has a wide appeal, ideally you'd want to show that product to, you'd want to show a person in the ad to that product that is the same age, the same race, the same gender as the person that you're trying to market to. But it's typically too expensive to go out and get, 60 or 100 or 200 models of all different ages and genders and races. And most people can't afford that. With generative AI, you can take the structure of an advertisement that you like, and you can generate those options really, really easily. And you don't have to pay anybody because they're not real people that are being generated. There's a whole site called This Person Does Not Exist that generates faces of people that are not real people. So that's one of the pros of it. So when you look at doing that across image ads, blog posts, social media posts, landing pages, a video will be coming soon where you can make, personalized video in a matter of moments to, anybody that you want to market to. It's really going to provide a much better, more targeted buying experience. There's some problems with generative AI that come along with that. One is you don't always get high quality outputs. Remember how I talked about how the models introduce some randomness to get the other outputs? Well, sometimes that randomness leads to a human with 6 fingers instead of 5, or 3 eyes instead of 2. A lot of times to get the image that you really want out, even if you're really good at writing your inputs, which we call prompts, even if you're really good at writing prompts, it might take, hundreds or thousands of image generations to get out something that's really good that you really like. So that's one problem. The second problem is, even if it's high quality, it still might not be appropriate for you. ChatGPT doesn't know things like when you run marketing programs and you make brand promises, small things people do are very, very important. You have to say things in the right way. And you might be like, we don't use the word luxury, we use the word high performance. That's, for example, from the Tesla style guide. Well, ChatGPT doesn't know that. So if you're going to use ChatGPT to generate ads for you automatically, that may not, they may not follow your guidelines. So yeah, there's a bunch of problems like that. And then obviously if you deploy it at the scale, if you have to check it all, like what are you going to do if you use ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion to generate 20,000 landing pages? Well, that's nice, but what are you going to do to check those 20,000 landing pages and make sure they're high quality?
Yeah, if only there was a solution for that, which I think we're gonna be talking about here pretty soon. Specifically, I think with BrandGuard's probably ideal for that. One of the things that came to mind just when you're talking about kind of creating these unique images that are relatable is what I hear, right? It's almost like personalization, right? When you're talking about, all these different kind of customers and they look different, they're going to have a personalization there with a specific landing page for them or something like that. And then also with the kind of the image generation and the randomness, we talked a little bit about noise, and I've played around with that, and I don't know if we want to go too deep into the weeds, but maybe you can talk about that. The mental image I get is it's kind of like snow on a TV or something. And I don't know if that is a good explanation, but can you talk a little bit about kind of the randomness and noise and how you can kind of use that to get images that you're looking to get and not six fingers, right?
Yeah, well, the good thing is the noise can be very creative. You know, when you don't come, you can think of it as saying, I have 1,000 data points that define my output. So let's take the dog idea again. I have 1,000 data points that define my dog. And now I want to, expand that to get a dog picture. And maybe 100 of those points are going to be, maybe 900 are going to sort of be specified by the prompt that I put in, and 100 are going to be sort of random. That's not really exactly how it works, but I think that's a good sort of conceptual model that might help you sort of think about it. So so that noise can sometimes do really cool things that you didn't anticipate. If you've ever asked ChatGPT to name something, sometimes it'll come up with some pretty creative things that you wouldn't have thought of. But it's also really hard to control anytime you introduce that noise, statistical noise, into that kind of process. So you can think about it as taking the cloud of everything that represents, say, a dog, compressing it down to the essence of a dog, and then every time you want a dog back out, adding a little noise as you expand it to get somewhere in that dog space.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like the dog's going to look the same every time, right? If it's the same seed and there's no noise, it's pretty much going to be the same.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, you're muted, Kim.
Oh, I said, now you're going to need to explain what a seed is, because that might be
yeah,
terminology.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
Rob, go ahead. You want to just talk about different seeds and stuff like that, especially with image generation?
Yeah. So like, let's say that you wanted to generate a number between 1 and 1,000, and you wanted some randomness and some structure to it. You could start with a seed, and maybe your seed is the roll of a die, because you know that that's going to be somewhere between 1 to 6, and then you're going to do some mathematical operations to it that ensure that you're sort of are always in that range. But that roll of the die provides some randomness. So so you can think about that as happening like take ChatGPT. Okay, it's trained on basically all the content of the internet, all the text content of the internet, and then it's tried to compress it down to a more narrow mathematical space. So if there are 200 attributes about something, we've tried to compress it down to the key 20. And then when we need to get back at it, we sort of re-expand it. And that compression, I don't know the best way to explain it without going into sort of the deep mathematics of it, but that compression helps you, is sort of the core of the way that these models work. It sort of helps train the models, and it helps the model navigate the sort of internal nodes of itself.
Yeah,
Cool.
it is an interesting concept, because yeah, it's hard to think. It's like you almost are doing it in reverse, kind of like it is fascinating. It's like, well, it's taking what it thinks the image is and creating it from reverse based on the prompt, the parameters you've given it. So yeah, I find it fascinating, but it's definitely above my pay grade as far as
Mine
the
too.
deep technology.
Well, to bring us right back to where we were talking before, you mentioned, there's pros and cons to generative AI. What would you say for businesses, because most of our audience are business owners, marketers, that type of thing. So for businesses, what is the biggest risk? More than just, kind of a downside, but like the biggest real risk they have to face?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're going to do and how supervised it is. So I would not worry. A lot of people worry about job loss. That's not something I would focus on or be concerned about, because there's going to be plenty of more work to do here. Even as you turn over more and more of the day-to-day operations for marketing to the machines, humans are still going to have to train the machines on, provide feedback as to like what's good, what's bad. Humans are still going to have to, make the plans, talk about, I mean, a machine can't suggest sort of de novo what channels you should use to acquire your customers, right? But once you're deployed in a channel, a machine can help you optimize that channel by running lots of experiments at scale, for example. So, so I think, some of the risks are, the lack of human supervision if you really turn it over without a lot of control. We've talked to to companies that want to use generative AI for digital collaborations. So you can imagine if you're a celebrity or a sports franchise or some kind of really interesting brand like that, and you want to collaborate with fans and you want to give them the power of Mid-Journey to just create whatever they want. Well, they're going to create a lot of things that you don't want them to create, right? That's what humans do, particularly if they're, teenagers or college kids or something. So I think there's a lot of risks that, things are off brand. There's a lot of risks that you waste a lot of time or that things get out. Yeah, there's technical risks of things like data leakage. So, if you're going to use ChatGPT, you want to be careful about what you type into it. Because under certain scenarios, depending on the license that you have and the model that you're using, that data may go into train the model further. I think there was an example of somebody using ChatGPT to write performance reviews. And so one of the guys who a performance review was written about using ChatGPT went to ChatGPT to search for his name, and a bunch of the stuff about the review came out.
Oh.
So you want to make sure that the data that you're putting doesn't leak into these models and is used for other things, particularly if it's, important or proprietary.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point, and it's one of the things I've talked to different people with databases as far as like, hey, if it is proprietary, you don't want your competition seeing this information. And I think we're also going to see Meta running into this because they want to open source their new AI, and the problem is, well, it's trained on our data. It's trained on Facebook, basically. So now you've got some serious privacy concerns, right? Where if we would use any of our names with their AI, it knows everything about everything we've ever posted on that platform. So,
Right.
And Lord, with some of these risks, where does the whole topic of deep fakes come in? Where does that uh, how has AI made that possible, and where are we right now in the continuum of, doesn't fool anyone to, oh my God.
yeah, because we're already seeing it with like political campaigns, right? Where that's AI is now completely banned and stuff from advertising, things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the deepfakes question is interesting. It's still, you have to be a little bit technical to make one. There still aren't too many tools that just sort of let your average person do it. And they're still a little bit computationally intensive. But the idea would be that you can take a series of text. So you can think about this as a generative model that takes a certain input. Maybe it's a bunch of words that you want somebody to say, and then runs it through an AI model that makes a certain person with a certain voice say those things. So you might have seen, I think one of the early deepfakes was, it was either Obama giving a speech that was actually given by Trump or vice versa, right? So saying things the other person would never say. And, that can get to be really scary because we've learned to rely so much on like video as a legitimate means of truth because it's been hard to fake up until today. And so there are companies out there working on this because you can imagine, like, you wouldn't want to, like, you can imagine how you could game a stock market, right? You buy JP Morgan stock and then you go and you deep fake a video of Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan saying they're going to do a, $10 billion stock buyback, and it pops and you sell it off and then people find out the video's fake. So lots of things like that could happen. You could imagine, two companies that were really competitive, one making a deep fake of the other CEO saying some really outrageous, socially unacceptable things,
Uh-huh.
and then running a cancel campaign against them because of what they said. So you have to be careful. There are companies working on this. There's a really interesting company called Reality Defender, and Reality Defender is sort of like the good guys that are always fighting against the bad guys. So there's still ways to detect these deep fakes, but the creation mechanisms are getting better and better and better, and Reality Defender is getting, better and better and better at trying to fight them. And so it's an interesting sort of cat and mouse game. But yeah, if you run a big company and you're worried about this kind of thing, the presence of your executives publicly and all that, I would definitely take a look at that at Reality Defender's offerings.
Very cool. Yeah, I've seen a couple different agencies now pop out with like kind of like safeguards and stuff like that. And again, I've seen, some measures taken to prevent any sort of like political deep fakes, as like you said, Other CEOs may be doing it, but I definitely know, I'm sure political campaigns were already thinking about doing things like that and making their opponents say things that they would never say and look really bad.
Yeah.
Well, it gets into that whole thing of who are you really talking to? Who are you really listening to? And right now, you can still pretty much figure out, like, I know that I'm speaking right now with Rob and Colin, but I can definitely envision a near future where I don't really know for sure because the video technology just, I mean, near future, I mean the next 5 years. I don't mean next month. But, now that we scared everybody, what are some good ways that generative AI can be used within a business to help them grow or become more efficient, more profitable?
So there's the main decision that I think you have to make if you're in a marketing team at a company is what scale do you want to deploy this at and where you want to start. I think you have to start looking at it because a lot of people are are going to adopt this stuff, and it's going to be important that you learn how to do it. I would say I probably wouldn't use it for my core creative initially. So even though you could spend days with Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or some similar tool trying to craft, your perfect images for your perfect, campaign for the year, I think your core imagery should still stay with your creative team, and I would focus more on um, smaller campaigns. So the mental model that I use to think about this is when when a new technology comes around, it makes certain things easier. What does it make easier, and how do you take advantage of that and get more of that thing that becomes easier? So it makes content creation easier, but you just start with your what I would call your lighter weight and less serious content. So I might start with having Chat GPT or some similar tool. There's other stuff, Cohere and whatnot on the market. You can write blog posts, maybe have it auto draft emails, so that you might still review. So maybe you typically have 3 customer segments and you draft slightly different emails for each one. Well, what if you could fine tune that down to 50 customer segments and have one of these tools generate slight variations for that? That's still manageable. Social media posts and things like that, are areas where you could use this. And then Google and Facebook, I think, are both building in generative capabilities to start to launch advertisements that are a little more targeted to the user and a little more customized to look and feel like, the appropriate thing that the user would like to see. So, so I would pick, a category that you feel comfortable experimenting with, and kind of start there and deploying some of these tools.
Very cool. It's exciting to hear about the certain platforms actually having built-in generative AI tools for marketers to use, which I think just even highlights the importance of like learning now how to use these tools as a marketer at a business or on a team, and being able to use these, especially once they're on the platform natively.
Right. Yeah, I think you're going to see it built in everywhere. I mean, if you use, 20 different SaaS tools in your marketing department, they're probably all going to have generative AI capabilities built in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
Seeing that a lot. Like every tool, I use a lot of tools, and Colin knows I'm like the tool queen. I
She's
love
a tools, yeah, tools
tools.
junkie.
That's a better
Yeah.
way to put it.
Yeah, I got to cut her off. She's gonna have to go into rehab.
An intervention. But I've seen all of them are incorporating generative AI. Like, oh, let our AI write this post for you, and we can do that. I still stick with use a tool called Magi, and I still stick with that because I know that it doesn't use my data to train the AI, the tool. It doesn't get back to OpenAI or uh, whoever the tool is created by. I know that it stays private, so that's why I tend to use that over ChatGPT or any other particular tool, though it is integrated with all of the tools. Anyway, I like that, but it's kind of a thing where people have really hyped generative AI, and it's been this, like phenomenon for 6 months, 9 months, really. But it seems like the buzz is kind of dying down a little bit. Do you think that that's just a natural evolution because we're all starting to adapt to it? Or do you think it's because maybe it's just not progressing at the speed that people thought?
I
Good
think
question.
Yeah, I think it came out and really shocked people, the capabilities of first DALI 2, the image generation model, then Stable Diffusion, and then ChatGPT. People in the space had been thinking about this for a while. The GPT-3 API, which ChatGPT was originally based on, actually came out in spring of 2020. So it had been out a few years and people had been building tools on this. And I think what happened is it's been really hard for people to figure out how to move forward sometimes and use these tools. Like it's one thing to pop into ChatGPT and use it to write some stuff you need to write, but really integrating it into your workflows, I think, has been challenging because there are so if you have if you have a workflow that has 8 steps and you can apply generative AI to 2 of those steps, maybe it speeds it up a little bit, but like you still have to wait at the other steps. So it's really hard, I think, to rethink your workflow for an AI world. Like, how should this really work? And where should the supervision be? And who should do what? And how do we make the whole thing faster? Right? Because what you really want to do is you want to get to the point where you're like, there's certain campaigns you might want to run sometimes based on maybe like minor holidays or events that happen in the news where you're just like, we can't put something together and get it out fast enough. But with generative AI, you could do that in a matter of, minutes and respond to something in theory, which would be really cool. But I think people have a hard time wrapping their head around that change in workflows. And so there's going to need to be, you're going to have this cycle of the most forward-thinking companies that adopt it. They speak at conferences and on podcasts and, at other types of events and kind of show people the way. People start to move like despite all this technology innovation, the ability of humans to adopt it and change their behavior is kind of the gating factor. And
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, well said. One of the things I talk about actually is kind of this mindset of how you have to really think about your workflow in a different way and think about, yes, what can I either do that I wouldn't be able to do or do faster or right do more, and then yeah, what needs the supervision or what can I let go completely. And maybe that's something which is a good transition point maybe to talk about brand guard a little bit, as far as like, hey, we can't just let the generative AI take over everything, especially our branding and our images, and just go buck wild, right? Because it's going to create crazy hands, which I personally think is kind of funny that if you ask artists or either tattoo artists, whatever, it's like doing hands is like extremely difficult, right? That's why you get like, you ever see like the horrible praying hands tattoos, right? It's kind of a meme. And it seems that the AI has a problem with hands too. I don't know what that is, if just hands are difficult, but even in the negative prompts, you'll see like no ugly hands, no misformed hands,
Yeah.
are common negative prompts, right? Like don't do this. But anyway, so we don't want, the AI going crazy, drawing 7 wheels on a Tesla. So what do we do about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it sort of led to the company that I started, right? So this is my 4th company, and we started with the original idea that we were going to create all these advertisements using generative AI. And what we ran into is when you go to a marketer and you say, I can automatically create 5,000 Facebook ads for you in a matter of minutes off a couple of text prompts, they're like, this is amazing, but how do I know that these images are all good if they're all slightly different, right? What if you've used Stable Diffusion, you know that slightly different may mean like you get something weird in there that you don't want. So we built a feature into the tool called Brand Guard. And the idea was, can you teach machines to understand brands and branding? It turns out you can. We took inspiration from an area of machine learning called style transfer. What style transfer does, if you've ever seen one of those like free tools that trains a model on like all the Picasso pictures, and then you run your face through it and it gives you a Picasso-ified version of yourself. Well, that's the concept. We kind of said, well, if machines can understand the differences between artists, could they understand the differences between brands? So we scraped all this like 70 million, pieces of branded data, images, texts, website stuff, advertisements, and then we kind of told this model, figure it, here's Nike stuff, here's Adidas stuff, here's Reebok stuff, here's whatever, like figure out what's similar and different between these things sort of on your own. That's sort of how deep learning works. And the model got really good at it. And so we used that, and we, then we started incorporating pieces from the style guide. So upload your style guide and let's see if your logo's right. And ultimately that became the company. We stopped doing the generative stuff. I think because my thesis became, in a world where you're going to have lots of generative tools, if you use Marketo and Writer.ai and GPT-3 or ChatGPT or GPT-4 or Cohere, Canva, like they're all going to have generative tools built in.
Mhm.
What you need is one centralized location for what we call brand governance, which is like, this is where I upload and train all my brand assets, and I teach machine learning models to understand what represents my brand and what doesn't. And then we plug into all those tools, and basically we score everything. So we tell you this is 77% on brand, it's 92% on brand, it's whatever. And then you can set up approval workflows on top of that. Maybe there are levels that things get auto approved. Maybe there are levels where, well, like let me give you a concrete example.
Mhm.
Let's say you use Marketo and you're using Marketo to write 5,000 emails, and Marketo, if they don't have it, will soon have some generative AI functionality, I'm sure, to personalize those emails. So you decide to trigger that, and you get 5,000 slight variations on your email. Well, you could use BrandGuard to say, show me everything where the words that are used are, 85% on brand or higher. If it's lower than that, kick it back to the machine to try again and keep trying until it's better than 85%. If it's 95% or above, go ahead and send it. And if it's 85 to 90%, that's a gray area. Flag it for human review. But now the humans maybe review 80 or 100 emails instead of 5,000. And so, so that's what we build. We teach machines to understand brands and branding, and we build what we call a brand governance platform that I think will help with a lot of this as the world goes in this direction.
Very
How
cool.
which I've seen the platform and it's amazing, but
It is really cool.
very cool. How do you integrate with all of these other? Do you is this like something you have to connect your Canva account with BrandGuard account, and you connect your Marketo with BrandGuard? How does that work?
There's a couple of ways. We have an API, and so if you're building something custom, or if you have an internal tech team, we can pull it into whatever else that you're doing. We can also pull in data from different sources from that. We also have a Chrome plugin that is configured to work with a lot of those tools. So if you use Chrome or Firefox, you can, if you go to the BrandGuard blog, you can see examples where we have this really cool example where we took 2 glasses of beer sitting on tables in a bar. They look very different. One of them scores very high for a Budweiser ad, and one of them scores very low for a Budweiser ad. And when you show it to people, they go, oh yeah, I see it, right? There's no logos or anything in there. So there's a Chrome plugin, and there's a web interface where you can drag and drop content as well. And then we're in the process of, we'll have some announcements coming up this fall on some deeper integrations that we're doing with a lot of partners. So part of our strategy is to be everywhere that you work.
Quick question about, because that was a really cool example with the 2 beers. So it sounds like you said that humans keyed in on the picture that to them resonated more Budweiser brand wise, as did the AI, but there was no logos or anything like that. So there was some sort of like, were they able to define it, or was it not defined? I'm sure the AI could define it.
It's colorful, it's crisper, it's like people commented on the wood on the table that it's sitting on looks different.
Interesting.
These are all the things a brand manager would think about. So the way to think about this is the machines don't know anything that humans don't know, right? The way the machines learn is by the humans repeatedly saying, this is on brand, this isn't. This is on brand, this isn't. And then the machine starts to take guesses. So it's really trying to replicate how the humans think. And it's trying to pick up on the essence of things. I mean, this is how you teach a human designer over time when they come to work for your company, right? They start to go like, and then once they become very senior, they go, we would never use that color wood,
Right. Yeah. And let me ask you this: is that what would you call like supervised learning at that point? Right. The deep learning is, hey, here's a bunch of data. Here's our objective. Go try to do this. And then is the next part where you're saying yes, no? Is that more like supervised learning?
Yeah, so it's a combination of, so the model starts with some supervised learning and some unsupervised learning, or what they call semi-supervised learning. And then it finishes with what they call RLHF, so reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is the humans constantly saying like, okay, you're confused about this asset, this is on brand or this isn't.
Gotcha.
So what we ended up with was an ensemble of 36 different machine learning models. Part of the reason we don't do any generation of content is because there's a lot of people doing that. It's a competitive market, and we have to really stay focused on just adding models and models and models, because we get asked to check for all kinds of things we can't check for yet. Like, does this sound like my competitor? Like ChatGPT was scraped on the internet. If you ask it to create a shoe ad for you, it's it's going to sound a little Nike-ish, right? Because that data overwhelms the
Absolutely.
internet.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And we're going to run into that too as more companies and more marketers start adopting generative AI. And I've talked
Yeah.
about this is like you're really going to get to the point where you're all sounding like one brand or you're all sounding like whatever the white noise of the current chat GPT is. And that's why like things like Brand Guard and Magi and things where personalization are going to be super, super important.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you. So, what type of business, or I would say who's your ideal client, but what type of business is this ideally suited for? Like, are there different niches or different verticals or sizes? Like, who do you think could really use your technology?
You know, it's interesting. If you had asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have said this targets the top 10,000 brands in the world. But now we have, we recently signed a customer as a 40-person company, and they have 2 people in marketing, and their use case is they're not even using generative AI. Their use case is we have all these third-party contractors writing tweets and stuff for us, and we just spend too much time telling them like, no, that's not right. No, don't say it that way. So what they use it for is anytime you write a tweet or a blog post or some text content, upload it to Brand Guard, and until it's meets a certain threshold, don't show it to the marketing team. So that's kind of cool. But I would say where you're going to get the most benefit from it. I mean, that's an easy way to use the free version of the tool. But where you're going to get the most benefit from it probably has to do with really rolling out generative AI at scale. And there aren't a lot of companies that have done that yet. But if you're looking to it, particularly if you're the kind of company that's like, oh, I want to do this, but I see all these problems, I think we can really be an enabler tool to help you do that. And we know a lot of these players as well, so we can help you put together a platform that works with a lot of this stuff.
Very cool.
Well, so give us like a real life what you did with the beer example, but and the tweet is also very interesting. But what would be like a typical use case for the technology for small to mid-sized business?
Yeah. So we have a lot of people that want to use it to create custom landing pages, or want to use Midjourney to create, or Stable Diffusion to create like lots and lots of blog post content and imagery. And it's really important to them that things feel like they're on brand. So one of the use cases, like one of the companies we have that's using both, it's interesting, is there's a hotel chain. They have 17 hotel brands, and the designing group works on all of them. Well, you can imagine working on 17 brands that have sometimes just slight variance in how they're different can be challenging.
Sure.
And so they use this sort of as a double check on things that come out that both we meet the look and feel of the brand, but also criteria, because we can take a rule in a style guide that says something like there's a very popular European company that has a rule in their style guide that says no, what does it say? No child can be shown using technology without an adult present, which is an interesting brand guideline, and one that's hard to teach to models. So what we would do is we ingest that rule. We use that as a prompt to create images that violate that rule, and we put those in the model automatically as negative samples, things that you don't do, and the model picks up on that fact. So yeah, one of our most active users is this large hotel brand, and they just use it as a constant double check to make sure that you're not getting confused across all the different brand guidelines for 17 brands. And they also are they're the first company we've seen use Midjourney at scale, which is also really interesting.
Wow, interesting that people aren't using it yet. That's one of the first ones.
Yeah. Is there a use case for, because user generated content obviously is so big and just growing, is there a use case where when a brand is maybe deciding what user generated content to use, they can run it through Brand Guard and it will come up with the instances or the most closely aligned with the brand?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, we've talked to companies about 2 use cases like this. We don't have somebody actively using it for this, but we've built some demos for people. One is influencer marketing as user generated content in some form. So you can imagine that you're gonna mail your hat to an influencer, and that person is going to take 20 pictures with it, and then it's going to upload them to BrandGuard, and BrandGuard is going to say, based on our understanding of your brand, this is the top picture or two that you should post.
Right.
So you take that back and forth out, you make that whole process faster. You make it easier on the influencer not to have to understand all your brand guidelines. And then the brand owner can have a little bit more trust that what gets posted will look good. So that's one use case. The other is we've talked to a video game company about they want to do more third-party content in the metaverse because their games are metaverse type games. So you can imagine if brands want to interact there and you want to provide tools to let people create things, you still want to place restrictions on those. But like most scenarios, writing a series of rules is challenging. So I'll give you an example. There's a brand that has a rule that says you can't show anybody in your marketing that has a lot of piercings, right? They're very sort of like upscale, that's just not their target market. And so you hear something like that and you're like, well, does that include ear piercings? Because ear piercings maybe represent something different socially than maybe like an eyebrow piercing or something more progressive. So if you're a more conservative brand, you might still tolerate ear piercings, but that's a hard thing to catch with a series of rules. And but models catch it just from lots of examples. So you can imagine when collaborating in a video game world and creating content, it would be really nice to be able to have a tool that says, yes, this is acceptable and this is not.
Oh yeah. So you're really positioned for the coming future. I love your example for influence marketing, and because that too is an area that is just growing like crazy. So it's you started to give me all sorts of things to think about here and how this can be applied. So I heard you mention that you have a free trial. What are the specifications of that?
Yeah, we have a free version. If you're only going to use this on one platform and you're just going to score, dozens of assets a month, you're not really ready to make the generative AI leap. You can use it for free. You have to upload your style guide if you have one, and some sample assets for us to fine tune the models on. And yeah, people can sign up at BrandGuard AI, BrandGuard.ai. So it's pretty easy.
Nice. This has been just really, really interesting. And were there any other questions that you had, Colin?
No, I would just say, like, do you have maybe just any advice to like startups or smaller businesses? Maybe they're just not quite sure if even generative AI is for them. And I know we talked about workflows and stuff like that. Do you have any like recommendations for even just marketers? Like, hey, where can they start? What's a good way to just kind of get into this and just maybe just dip your pinky toe into the pool a little bit?
Well, I would say that if you're small business or mid-sized business, you should definitely start trying, because these tools are going to give you the power to compete with the big guys and, move at a speed and a scale that, used to require you to hire more people, which you probably don't have money to do. And so as you can replace more types of human labor with this kind of thing and make humans more strategic, more planners and trainers and strategists, for the first time, you can outthink the big guys if you want to. So I definitely think people should be looking at it. I would encourage you to start. ChatGPT is a good place to start to play around with, or Stable Diffusion, and write some prompts. So a prompt is to say, a little snippet that says what you want the machine to generate. So write an ad for a brand new Nike running shoe that has these features and targets, college age recreational runners or something like that, and see what comes out, and vary your prompts and see what comes out, and it'll start to understand what these tools can and can't do. And then any marketing tools that you use that have these features built in, I would turn them on and start to play around with them.
Very cool. Great advice. Well, thank you, Rob. This has been awesome. You guys definitely check out BrandGuard AI. If any of this has sounded even close to a problem that you're having or a need you might have, highly recommend it. Really impressed with what we saw there, and definitely keep us up to date. And please come back if you have any more updates or anything to share. This has just been great, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, talk to you soon. Great. Well, Kim, I think we've got some awesome news updates, don't we?
I believe we do. So, Ada?
Thanks, Kim and Colin. Amazon has introduced new rules for AI-generated books on Kindle. Authors must now disclose to Amazon if their book was created using AI tools. This comes as Amazon looks to better define what constitutes AI-generated or AI-assisted content amid the growing ubiquity of language models. Also, Anthropic has launched a paid plan for its conversational AI chatbot Claude, called Claude Pro. The premium subscription provides enhanced usage and additional features beyond the free version, as Anthropic looks to generate revenue from its popular language model-based chatbot platform. That's all the news for now. Back to you, Kim and Colin.
Okay. She went down and then up there at the end. That was wasn't expecting that. Oh man, that was great. That was really cool. Really cool to see how they're just focused on integration at this point, so that everybody can utilize BrandGuard across kind of all their endeavors, which is so cool to see. And what I love too is what you talked about, which was the UGC and influencers. Because something I didn't think about. It's like, hey, is that, everybody just kind of leans into using UGC, but I don't know if they're even thinking if it's on brand. Same with like what influencers are doing. They could kind of do whatever they want. So,
well, I remember an ads client that I had, and they wanted to use UGC as part of their ad campaign. And so I was tasked with going through all of that manually. And that was a chore.
So much work.
It was, and then after a while, you're just like, sure, that works. Yeah. And so I think using this tool, even for something like that, could really be amazing for big brands. But, I have not heard any conversations around brand governance. You just don't hear people talking about it, but it really is crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it can make or break it. And it's something that it's kind of hard to define sometimes. Like you said, people need years and years of experience, which you can kind of short track by training the AI. And then, it's something where you go, yeah, it just doesn't feel right. And once you know that, that's how your customers are going to feel as well. And your prospects are going to go, well, that just doesn't feel right, So
yeah, that's true.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, great show. We did want to remind you guys to go check out the Prompt Exchange. That is over 2,000 AI prompts. Those are basically instructions that you can give to the AI to get the output you want. So again, if you're looking to kind of dip your toes into generative AI, use ChatGPT, see what kind of images you can create. Highly recommend you check out the AIpromptexchange.com. Kim, anything you want to add?
Yeah, when we were speaking with Rob, he had talked about, or maybe it was you that said this, how difficult it is to integrate AI into your workflows, because a lot of people aren't even used to thinking about workflows. And so that is one of the services that we provide, is we help businesses figure out how to integrate AI into their workflows, maybe in ways they haven't thought of. So just check out AIadvantageagency.com if you would like more information on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to work with Kim and I and learn how you can get ahead of the competition and start competing with the big guys by using AI, go to AIadvantageagency.com. We're happy to check it out and talk to you directly. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And as my Bluetooth falls out, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.